How Texas is not like the rest of the South. I've spent most of my life living in the American South, Georgia, Alabama, Tennessee. You name it. I know what Southern sounds like. I know what it feels like. So the first time I visited Texas, I thought I had a pretty good idea of what to expect. But I was wrong. Texas looks Southern in some ways. It's got barbecue, big churches, pickup trucks, and the same heat that'll melt your soul in July. But the moment you actually spend time with Texans, you realize something. They don't just live in the South, they live in Texas. And to them, that's a completely different thing. There's a pride here that goes beyond state pride. It's deeper, older. Texas used to be its own country, and honestly, it still kind of acts like one. The culture, the politics, the way people talk about freedom, property, and identity, it's just different. And the more I looked into it, the more I realized Texas never really joined the South. It just happened to share a border. Texas was never just a state. Before it was part of the United States, Texas was its own republic, a full-fledged, independent country. From 1836 to 1845, it had a president, an army, a navy, its own currency, and its own foreign policy. You could argue that Texas is the only state in America that voluntarily gave up its independence to join the Union on its own terms. That decade as a sovereign nation did something to the Texas psyche. It planted a seed, a kind of identity that runs deeper than the typical American statehood. Even today, some Texans will joke about secession, but beneath that humor is a real sense that Texas could stand on its own if it had to. It's not just pride. It's historical muscle memory. Most southern states were carved out of colonies or added through westward expansion. But Texas? Texas fought for its independence, from Mexico, not Britain. Its founding story is more like a revolution than a negotiation. And that's a big reason why it doesn't behave like the rest of the South. Even its entrance into the U.S. came with unusual conditions. Texas kept control of its own public lands. It reserved the right to divide itself into 5 separate states. It didn't just join the Union, it negotiated its way in. And that independent streak still shows. Texas doesn't sound like the South. It sounds like Texas. Spend an afternoon in Georgia and you'll hear that slow, syrupy drawl. Go to Alabama and there's a certain softness to the way people speak. But in Texas, accents shift depending on where you are. In the East, you might hear something Southern. But head west or south, and suddenly you're hearing twangs that feel closer to cowboy country, or even Spanish. Texas isn't monolithic. It's a cultural mosaic. It blends Southern roots with Western grit, Mexican heritage, and even a touch of frontier individualism. You walk into a barbecue joint in Mississippi, you expect pulled pork and sweet tea. In Texas, you're getting brisket, smoked for 14 hours, and maybe a big red soda. Different state. Different flavor. Literally. Religion is big in both Texas and the South, but in Texas, it has a more performative edge. Mega churches the size of stadiums. Televangelists with oil money. It's faith wrapped in power, politics, and pride. And when it comes to personal values, freedom, land, self-reliance, Texans double down. There's a frontier mentality here. We take care of our own. You can see it in their trucks, their ranches, their open carry laws. The South has charm. Texas has swagger. Texas isn't just another southern state. It's a cultural force of its own. Texas isn't red because it's southern. It's red because it's Texas. Yes, both Texas and much of the South lean Republican. But the reasons run deeper than party lines. In Mississippi or Alabama, conservatism often comes from tradition, passed down through generations, shaped by church pews and community ties. In Texas, it's more about power, economics, and rebellion against federal control. Texas doesn't vote red out of loyalty. It votes red out of defiance. You'll hear it in the way politicians talk. We don't want D.C. telling us what to do. Texas has sued the federal government dozens of times on everything from environmental regulations to healthcare mandates. That's not Southern politeness. That's open confrontation. And it's not just about resisting Democrats. Even during Republican administrations, Texas pushes back if it feels the federal government is overreaching. It's a bipartisan independence rooted in the belief that no one, not even Washington, gets to boss Texas around. Some call it stubbornness. Texans call it freedom. Even when the rest of the South shifts politically, Texas often stays in its own lane. It doesn't just follow trends, it makes them. The Tea Party movement? Born in Texas. Some of the loudest voices on border policy? Texas. Its political culture isn't a copy of the South. It's a fusion of libertarianism, nationalism, and hard-nosed pragmatism. Texas isn't just red. It's Texas red. Texas doesn't just feel different. It acts different. And it has the numbers to back it up. Let's talk size. Texas is massive. It's bigger than France. You could fit the entire United Kingdom inside it, twice. But it's not just about land. Texas has a population of over 30 million and an economy that, if it were its own country, would be among the top 10 in the world. Oil, tech, agriculture, aerospace. Texas doesn't rely on just one industry. Houston is a global energy hub. Austin is the Silicon Hills. Dallas runs finance and logistics. And don't forget the cattle. Texas leads the nation in beef production by a mile. This isn't a southern state quietly humming along. This is a state that fuels America and competes globally. And that's why Texas sees itself differently. When people talk about American exceptionalism, Texas hears, "We already do that." The pride here isn't just cultural, it's structural. The state builds like it's preparing for independence. It runs its own electrical grid. It has its own emergency response systems. Heck, it even celebrates Texas Independence Day. You don't get that in Georgia or South Carolina. Texas has always flirted with the idea of secession, not as a serious threat, but as a statement of autonomy. The message is clear. We don't need you as much as you think we do. When you have the size, the money, and the swagger, why play by someone else's rules? When people picture America, cowboys, wide open land, big trucks, big hats, they're picturing Texas. Hollywood has turned Texas into a symbol. The lone cowboy riding into the sunset. The oil tycoon with swagger. The rancher, the outlaw, the sheriff in a dust storm. Even people who've never been to the U.S. think of Texas when they think of America. Texas didn't become a brand by accident. It cultivated that image. And Texans lean into it. They wear the hats. They fly the flags. They name their kids after gunfighters and rivers. It's a place where mythology and reality blur. And that cultural weight has power. It gives Texas an outsized influence in American storytelling, movies, music, TV. From Walker, Texas Ranger to country songs that romanticize the open road. Texas isn't just in the South. It's the face of something bigger. But here's what's strange. The deeper you go into Texas, the more contradictions you find. Yes, it's conservative, but Austin is famously liberal. Yes, it's rural, but its cities are exploding in size. Yes, it's proudly independent, but it receives billions in federal funding. Texas isn't one thing. It's everything at once. That's what makes it hard to categorize and impossible to ignore. You can't talk about Texas without talking about its scale. Everything in Texas is big. The landmass is the size of France. You can drive 12 hours and still be in Texas. It has multiple climate zones, dozens of dialects, and hundreds of distinct local cultures. In most southern states, a 3-hour drive gets you to the border. In Texas, you're just getting started. And with that scale comes economic weight. If Texas were its own country today, it would be the 8th largest economy in the world, bigger than Canada or South Korea. Oil, tech, agriculture, aerospace, medicine, Texas doesn't just participate in global markets. It leads them. That bigness affects mindset. Texans don't see their state as a slice of a regional pie. They see it as the pie. People move to Texas to build something. Businesses, families, reputations. There's space to grow and freedom to try. That frontier spirit never died. It just got Wi-Fi. In a sense, Texas has outgrown the South. Not because it's forgotten where it came from, but because it kept moving forward. It's not just geographically distant from places like South Carolina or Kentucky. It's psychologically distant. And that's why, when you stack it against the rest of the South, Texas doesn't just feel different. It feels separate. So we come back to the question, is Texas still part of the South? Geographically? Partly. Historically? Definitely. Culturally? Sometimes. But emotionally, that's where things get complicated. Texas feels like a place apart, not just from the South, but from the entire United States. It's a land where myths still breathe, where flags still fly proudly in front yards, and where people introduce themselves as Texans before Americans. There's pride here, not just in the state's past, but in its potential. And yet, the South is in its bones. You can see it in the barbecue pits, the front porch rocking chairs, the church on every corner. In the yes, ma'ams, and no, sirs. In the hospitality that says, sit down a while. Texas didn't shed the South. It evolved beyond it, stretching the definition of what Southern can mean. Maybe that's the real answer. Texas isn't Southern in the way Mississippi is, or Georgia, or Tennessee. But it carries the echoes of that heritage and reinterprets it through its own scale, swagger, and speed. And maybe that's what makes Texas so captivating. It's not bound by geography. It's not boxed in by politics. It's not repeating the past. It's rewriting it. Texas is a mirror of the American spirit, restless, bold, complicated, and sometimes contradictory. It's both proudly traditional and fiercely innovative, rooted in history, but reaching for something bigger. So if you're asking whether Texas is still the South, maybe you're asking the wrong question. Maybe the better question is, where is Texas going next? Because love it or hate it, this state doesn't just follow the map. It draws its own.